welcome to today's tutorial. So today we're making this gorgeous scrunchie. It's knitted and was inspired by Anthropologies knitted scrunchie. So here is the final result. I'm going to put all the materials and everything you need in the description, and if you've got any questions or the tutorial doesn't quite make sense, just let me know in the comments and I'll get back to you, but enjoy the tutorial. I did also want to say, if you're looking for another little project that you can do and you're into crocheting, I've also got a crochet hair bow tutorial on my channel. This is inspired by Damazon Madder, so I'll put the link to that in the description, and this could be your next project after the scrunchie. So this is a great project for using up scrap yarn. You can choose how many colours you want, but I would recommend about 3 to 4 colours, and with this sort of size yarn. I'm using 3.75mm needles. This is quite a slow project, believe it or not, even though the project size is quite small. I'll just show you what I've been working on. So you can see that it's actually double knitted, so it's back to front on both sides. So it means you're not doing one side, you're doing both sides, but at the same time. It's nice and thick, and because we want the scrunchie to hold its shape nicely, we want it to be thick. I've also started with a scalloped edge. So I'll start with the scalloped edge, show you how to do the double-sided knitting, and then we'll get to the middle bit where we'll hold the elastic. So I'm just going to move that project aside and show you how to start the beginning of your project. So because you're casting on a lot of stitches, you'll probably want to measure a long tail of yarn about, I'm going to say 250 centimeters, just to be safe. That's probably a lot more than you need, but it's just to be safe. You don't want to be caught in the middle of your stitches and then you don't have any more yarn left to do. So to start, you're going to do a slip knot and cast on 200 stitches, which, yes, it is a lot. So you might have to count a few times to make sure you've got it right. Just make sure it's at a value of 2. So 200 stitches. Here we go. So we're going to start with the double-sided knitting. It might take a few rows to get used to it. So you'll first be knitting a stitch. And then you're going to pop your yarn round as if you're going to purl. Instead of actually purling, you're just going to slip your stitch onto that needle and then put your yarn back to do your next knit stitch. So do it again. So a normal knit stitch, pop your yarn around as if to purl, and slip the stitch onto the needle, then put your yarn back round to do a knit stitch. So you're just going to alternate that pattern down the needles. So once you've done one row of the double-sided knitting, you're just going to keep continuing to do that for 9 more rows. And then we will get to the scalloped edge. So it's exactly the same. You're going to do a knit, put your yarn round, slip the stitch onto your needles, wrap it back, and knit, and just continue that for the rest of the row. If you ever get confused which stitch you're on, if you're on the knit stitch or the slip purl stitch. You can see here that this longer stitch will be a knit stitch, so I'll just do that. Purl slip stitch has these bumps over the top. So knit, purl, knit, purl. Purls are the ones with the bump. So after you've done 10 rows, which will equal 5 rows on this side and 5 rows on this side, you can then start to do your scalloping. So to do that, on this edge, you're going to pick up that first loop, then the second loop, pop it on the needle, and then knit those 3 stitches together. And then you're going to follow the same double-sided knitting pattern for 6 rows. So we're going to pop the yarn in front, pick up the stitch as if to purl, and leave it on the needle, bring the yarn round, knit, and then continue until you've picked up 6 stitches after that first stitch that you did. So I'll just show you it again. So you're going to be starting with a knit stitch where you'll start the scallop. Go to that first loop at the bottom, pick that up, it's quite fiddly, and you go up 2, 1, 2, oh. Pick that next stitch up and pop it on, pop those on the needle, and then you're going to knit those 3 together. And then you're going to do the double-sided knitting for 5 stitches. So slip that one, knit, slip, knit, slip, and then back to the next scalloped edge. So picking up that first stitch and go 1, 2, pick up the third one and pop them on the needle, knit those together, then do double-sided knitting for 5 stitches. And you can see the scallop edge forming there. So you're going to do that all the way along the row. So I'll just finish that off. Once you've finished your scallop edge, you can now just start creating your scrunchie. So it'll just be the same double-sided knitting stitch until you get to the end, and you'll do 30 rows. So we're just going to do that, and here I'll put in how many rows I've done of each colour. But you can choose how many rows you want depending on your pattern that you want. So we're nearly at the end of the scrunchie, so excluding the first 5 rows, I've done 15 rows on each side, so that's 30 rows plus 10 for the first few for the scalloped edgings. And now we're going to do the section where we put the elastic. So instead of doing double-sided knitting, we're just going to do normal stockinette stitch. And we're going to create a section that we'll be able to fold over and slot the elastic through. So I'll let you know how many rows I do, but this should be a lot quicker because the stockinette is a lot quicker than double-sided knitting. So I've done 8 rows of that stockinette stitch, and now, so you can see the pearls on the other side. So I'm going to cast it off and then we're going to fold it over and secure it. So to cast off, you're just going to knit like normal. Do 2 stitches and then bring that first stitch over the top of the second one, and then repeat that. Bring the first stitch over the top, and just do that all the way down the row. So I've casted off every stitch, which took a while, and now I'm just going to fold this over, and I'm going to use the outer stitches. So you can see on the V, I'm going to use the outer stitch, and I'm going to just sew it along so it attaches and makes a loop. So I finished sewing that together to make this loop. It does look a bit funny right now, but when it's all squidged together, it will look good. And now I'm just taking a safety pin and I'm going to thread my elastic through this loop that we've made. So the way I would measure out how much elastic you need is I would pop it on your head and obviously like twist it round as if you're wearing the scrunchie, and like test whether that fits over a ponytail. So I've measured it to be this size, so I'm gonna tie that off and then I'll loop the ends through here, and then we'll weave in the ends and secure this gap here.